Greetings, chess friends. Today, we are going to see three games, all of which have one characteristic which I think helps learn chess very, very well. This is going to help you improve if you look at games with players of different skill levels. 200, 300, 400 point rating differences. You will learn a lot from these type of games. Let's jump in and see exactly what I'm talking about, and I'll expand upon this idea as we go. But the reason, let's say, the games of the old days were so instructional was it was just Capablanca and Lasker beating up on a lot of guys who just weren't ready to compete. That big skill difference shows what mistakes look like as well as how to punish them. And here we'll see a player with a pretty good rating. This young lady, 2200. I believe these are the FIDE ratings, and Grandmaster Alexander Lenderman. You don't always get to see these games, as games of the highest level broadcast games are usually pretty close opposition. Even a 26 to a 2700, sometimes you can see the difference. Let's check out this game, the Benoni, not known as a top opening. So we can maybe put that down as our first observation that Black plays second tier opening, let's call it, but one you don't really see at the highest level. Okay, bishop f4, always a6 is met with a4 to prevent the move b5, very typical theme. h3. I would say that often the strong players try to not play the exact main lines or slight sidelines just to get their opponent out of their comfort zone. A player 2200 is very likely to know some openings deeply, be very good in certain variations. So playing moves like bishop f4 and h3, not deciding where this bishop's going just yet, might kind of be a wrinkle that the lower rated player isn't prepared for. And also notice this bishop has a retreat square, so it's not going to get bothered by a move like knight h5. Castles, e3, queen e7, bishop e2, all pretty standard. You don't see the stronger player outplaying the lower rated player yet. Again, white, Grandmaster, Alexander Lenderman. Knight d2. And you have to ask yourself, is that a move that I would play? How many of us would just castle here? Right? Knight d2. Where is that going? Well, a very common theme in this opening is to get to this square knight c4. You can see that it will immediately pressure this pawn, this square, and the knight will be very well placed there. And because we played the move a4, they don't have that b5 move necessarily kicking us away. Rook d8, castles. You knew that was coming. h6. Again, no real bother here because we always have a place to retreat. Bishop h2. g5, as if that happened in the other order. Knight c4, we knew that was coming. Knight e8, and this knight actually gets kind of stuck here, but you do need some support on this pawn, as it is kind of the typical target in this Benoni structure. Bishop d3, and I'll mention this, that the strong players, the Grandmasters, know which pieces to trade. They trade the right pieces, which are going to help them strategically. After this move g5, you can say that there's some weaknesses in here, but they're not really weak because we have the bishop cutting through, defending all the squares, and white says, well, let's trade that bishop. Take. Now, again, our queen isn't going in here, but you can feel, especially this f5 square, that black is not really so safe. This pawn move g5 and h6 are going to come back to bite her in this game. Knight d7, f4. An aggressive move. White sensing the moment to attack. The piece is a little clumsy here for black. G takes f4. Bishop takes f4. Again, pressure on this pawn. It needs defense. Knight e5, a good natural move, and I suspect the next move might surprise black. Bishop takes. For some reason, we favor the bishop so much, it kind of maybe escapes us sometimes when we just trade them, especially a fianchetto bishop. Usually it's a bit of a shock when it gets traded for just another minor piece. But bishop takes back, and a5. Who was looking over on that side of the board? Well, Grandmasters are looking everywhere. Really kind of cementing, again, this one pawn holds two. If you follow the channel, you would hear about this quite a bit. I always touch on that nice idea. A huge gaping hole here on b6. Our knight can hop in there and bother the rook if needed. Bishop back to g7, knight e4, closing in, bringing one piece from the queen side towards the king side. And here, I think another key moment, offering a trade, but when we're the attacker, we don't want to trade. And with that g-pawn cover missing from the king side, knight g3 comes with some serious threats. Knight f5 is going to be just a dominant square for this knight. We love that. We did a video on knights getting to this critical square. What black wouldn't do for this pawn back on g6, guarding that square. Now you're really kind of missing that pawn badly. Rook e8. And the next move also really nice. I think knight f5 feels good and might even be played automatic by some, but then queen e4 is a little annoying. Not going to get into all the details. The engine does confirm white's still better, but that's possible. But the best move was played rook f4. This move does so many things. Most importantly, for that variation, the e4 square is supported again. The knight or queen cannot land on this square at the moment. Second, this rook cannot be bothered, and the other rook is going to join it, thereby creating this beautiful battery on the f file. Okay, so this is an excellent move. You might even see this rook swinging over or sacrificing. Knight f5 is still coming. It's move 24, and I feel like black's days are numbered. Rook a f1. We would all play that move. Bishop h8, not a good sign. Knight f5, that hits the queen. Queen on the back rank. Look at this. And you can tell the end is near. This is the last move in the game. Rook 1 to f3. Before even a check or a real attack comes, black just resigns. The threat, scarier than the execution, as they say. And this game is just over here in a matter of moves. Notice the black king won't even be able to hide as our queen is covering h7. Demolition here on the king side. So I can point to a few moves, namely g5, that really started to create weaknesses, and you can feel how brittle the king side was after a good trade here. Bishop d3, trade. Starts to feel more open, and then one move later, f4, really kickstarts this attack. Again, if we just pretend this pawn were back one square on g6, this wouldn't be as devastating, and black wouldn't be in as much danger. Let's move to the next game with the black pieces. And another notable grandmaster, Alexander Shabalov. He, again, like Lenderman, plays a lot of the American Open tournaments over the years, and in the early rounds especially, you'll get paired with a lot of 2100, 2200 type players. So you see a lot of these games. Remember last game I mentioned playing a little bit of sideline, second-rate type of variations in order to get your opponent out of the book. This is probably even more prevalent today, but e5. Of course, the most normal Sicilian move would be knight f6, knight c3, but e5, not a bad move at all. Just trying to get your less experienced, less knowledgeable opponent out of their comfort zone. And already I think that happened. Knight f3, a fine move, but I would say knight b5 is a little more testing. You can usually also tell when you're sitting there at the board how much time they're using, their body language, and how they feel. Knight f6, bishop g5, and already white has played some suboptimal moves. You want to typically get your king as safe as possible. This knight, how many moves has it made? Might think one, but it's actually made 3 moves, capturing the pawn and then coming back. So that knight has taken a lot of tempos. In other words, white is behind schedule. Bishop g5, but uncomfortable after queen a5 check. Obviously, it's check, so you have to get out of that. But here, also, this pawn is weak, and there's problems mounting. Bishop d2 and queen b6, poking around at the weaknesses. Notice the square is highlighted. This pawn on b2 is hanging, and then the rook. This knight on e4 is hanging with the possible checkmate. And white actually plays a good move. Knight c3, double daring black to take this, which is usually not a good idea. Rook b1 would come, and actually the white pieces would be more active. Every move is critical. Bishop c5, super scary if you get to take this pawn on f2. That just can't be allowed. Queen e2. And knight g4. Maybe not the very best move here, knight g4. A little too aggressive. Perhaps d6 was better, just continuing to develop. But Shabalov, again, if you're an American tournament player, you would definitely have seen him or known the name. A very, very strong grandmaster over the years. U.S. Open winner many times, U.S. champion, etc. Chess Hall of Famer as well. Loves to attack. And knight g4, overly aggressive, but he senses the moment, and you'll be able to feel that as the game goes on. But white plays a good move. Again, daring black to take this and responds with the best move, knight a4. This knight is making a fork, but so is this one, bothering the queen and bishop. This was easily calculated, I'm sure, by such a strong grandmaster as Shabalov, but this is not an easy position. And in fact, the engine is giving white as slightly better. He moves the queen. You had to. That took priority. Your rooks are still forked, so no sense in moving those. You'll lose the other one. Mine will take a free piece. Free bishop, free rook. Now, bishop for rook, black is an exchange ahead, but all white needs to do now is corral this knight, which is trapped, and white will be significantly ahead in material. If white picks up this knight, they are winning. And immediately he makes a mistake, g3. A very sensible move as well, but the problems are going to compound quicker than white realized. This knight isn't going anywhere, and we don't have to immediately collect it right now. A better option would have been to just move our queen. White should have just moved their queen, developed this kingside bishop, which hasn't moved yet. It's move 13, by the way, and then pick up the knight in time, no rush. Instead, going right for this and leaving the bishop, so to speak, just buried on f1 and g3, even if it is the bishop that might go take this, it just doesn't really help the bishop long term. And this game starts to get ugly fast. d6. In other words, what did the lower rated player white not understand? This was a dangerous position. Chris, what are you talking about? Danger on the white king here? Watch how fast this happens. d6, understandable. Knight b3. There is no danger. Oh, wait a minute. a5. That move is very pesky. Notice this knight does not have a safe square. The move a4 is coming. That's going to force your knight to the corner square, the worst of the worst, and render it essentially dead. So white says, all right, I can just play a4. Every pawn move around your king has consequences. Be very careful when you do those. Castles. Let's look at one variation. Had white just ignored that and played bishop g2, a4, this knight is trapped. We might as well save this one. Knight a1 it is. And black grabs one last pawn because that knight will be taken. And then just keeps playing. Castles, for example. Bishop e6, maybe also a good move. Black has here two extra pawns and a rook for two minor pieces. One of those minor pieces is not looking too good. And in fact, really black is better in this game. Still would be complicated, but certainly white could not claim any advantage. The real game again went a4, castles, bishop g2, bishop e6, another pesky move. Again, d6 was a tempo move, kicking the knight back. a5 was a tempo move, threatening a4. Bishop e6, a tempo move. This would be deadly. For example, if you were to take this with bishop or rook, bishop takes knight is absolute mayhem here. You cannot take this, as now the queen is staring at the king, knight d4, and we can call it a day. The queen is hanging. It's check. You think you could block, but knight takes b3, reconnects everything. It's check. You're pinned, and you're losing the queen on the very next move. Any move you have to get out of check, and queen takes queen. Game over. So the game really went here instead bishop e6, and they didn't take the knight in the corner, but king b1, getting out of this line of the queen. But the attack doesn't stop there. Knight b4, and that is threatening queen takes pawn. And if you take that, your situation still is very difficult. A takes, hello, open rook file on the king. You know this is danger, danger, danger. So again, black really understood the danger. I love this move, queen c6, poking around at the weaknesses. That pawn really cannot be defended. The bishop took the knight in the corner, and this game is over in just a moment. Queen takes. Queen a2 is threatened. Again, you don't want to take this as it opens the rook file. Knight c1 groveling for defense. Rook F, C8. Use more pieces. We always say that here. Look at this attack, folks. Bishop, knight, queen, rook, pawn. The other rook could potentially get in there. This isn't going to last long. Every single piece is playing. Queen E1, a bad blunder, and apparently white resigned without black even playing a move. Queen takes C2 is now available, very nearly checkmate. Bishop A2, that might be the best move, and this one is just over. So, wow, 21 move, demolition, and it felt like somewhere in this time, after knight A4, a good move, white actually had the slight edge. But in the chaos, and really only one move later, G3, white didn't quite understand how in danger they were. And I think after A5, probably the real situation, the truth set in, and white realized, yikes, I need to stop this. Okay, let's see the final game here, and I think you all get the idea. Of course, attacking for the stronger player is very natural and very unnatural defending, but this game has a different tone. Again, Alexander Lenderman, his opponent, roughly 2,100 FIDE player. Bishop b5, again, a good move, but potentially getting your opponent out of their comfort zone. Bishop takes, queen takes, all very natural, and c4. These are very respectable moves, but not probably one that black has studied over and over, as opposed to the main line, let's say here, knight or dragon, whatever he were to play. Okay, d4. Capture, capture, g6. So again, that dragon type setup. When white has the two pawns here, c4 and e4, this so-called Maroczy bind, it's difficult to get in the typical moves, d5 or b5 that black likes to do in the Sicilian. f3, capture, capture. And one thing I'll mention here, the dark squares are very important in this game. The reason for that is all of the pawns are on light squares. So this bishop really becomes a great piece. It can flow in between the pawns, as well as this one becomes a very dangerous and good piece, potentially. When the pawns are on the light squares, those dark squared bishops really get more play. The pawns are like traffic of chess. Castles, that guards the bishop now, so any knight move is a little scary. The bishop will be staring at the queen, and the queen retreats. I like this move a lot. You would be natural to play queen d2, but this one keeps a little more support on the c-pawn, which is clearly a target in the Sicilian. Very next move, rook c8. Castles, queen e6, lining up to this pawn, b3, a6, and b5. Here, black has played well. Again, the point of looking at these games is not horrible blunders or easy tactics to see. It's that the player 21 or 2200 is good. They're not going to hang a rook, but they're going to lose very consistently. And I know because I am that player. And looking at these type of games helped me a ton. Because I say, I can make good chess moves, but I'm consistently outplayed. So again here, white really looking for a win. And taking advantage of all the inaccuracies. So this is a pawn sacrifice, and a good one. Actually, white here gave a pawn, but black has this sort of Benko-like compensation. The open files, our queen is active, the bishop, and there is some potential here for black, not just a blunder. That was on purpose giving the pawn. Knight g4. Wow. A very interesting move. Attacking the bishop, but notice also converging here on c3 with two pieces. F takes g3. One thing I'll mention with this shakeup, even let's pretend, probably not the case, but let's pretend that white didn't see this move coming. Surprise. Grandmasters and strong players in general handle surprises well. They react well. They adapt well. So here, if this was a shocking move, I'm sure white took a bit of time, absorbed the characteristics and changes in the position, and slowly made the capture, finding the best situation. So even when you're surprised, you really need to buckle down and not make that second mistake. Queen d3, again, the best move. And bishop to b2, again, the lower rated player slips. Here, white is completely fine. Remember, white up a pawn, but maybe better to just play a central defended move like bishop to e5. You're pointing at this pawn on h2. You are also threatening this one, potentially. So black has something going, white still slightly better. But after bishop b2, rook takes rook. Remember, white up a pawn, so we're happy to trade. Queen d5, we're up a pawn. Capture. Captured. And notice you could not play, for example, queen takes g4 because queen takes f7. Much too scary with this rook defending. So the queens go. Take, take. Here we are. White up a pawn. It felt like black had a little play in this game, or even here, bishop a3. You have your extra pawn, but they're frozen, and he's going to get in a move like rook c2. But material matters, and again, the strong players play very, very accurately with rook b1. An excellent move. Rooks go behind past pawns. Any invasion here, rook c2, for example, we're just going to get the pawn marching. He didn't do that. He played rook c3, but let's look at rook c2 because it does win the pawn back. b4, rook takes pawn, b5, and probably at this moment you can feel, whoa, that pawn is going fast. For example, the bishop maybe moves to c5. We can take, and keep pushing the rook just back in time, but it's not comfortable or fun at all for black. Real game, though, went rook c3. He's threatening the bishop, and that just helps us make a good king move starting to get to the center. Remember, your king is important in the endgame, and really this move is not any danger. Bishop c5, and we turn this into a rook endgame. We're losing another pawn here, but it just doesn't matter. Where are the passed pawns, folks? This, for a grandmaster, is elementary. Two connected passers. Rook is already behind them. They support each other. Our king is closer. This game is over. a4. King f8, scrambling back. b4. Rook c2 check. We don't even care about these pawns. You can have them. These two connected passers are just overwhelming. And white finishes it. It takes a few moves, but pretty comfortable. No real danger. b5. a5. b6 check. a6. I just want to point out, if you had put your king on b7, we're pushing anyway. a6. If you capture that, b7. All that matters is we get to the queening square. So king b8, a6. Rook gets behind passed pawn, but it's too little and too late. a7. And a very nice moment here. I like the next moves. g5. Putting the clamps down. Of course, we can't make any progress just yet with these passed pawns, but putting the clamps on these two pawns, it would be still hard for black to make a passed pawn. We have kind of this one holds two due to en passant, and one holding these ones in place. Rook a3 check just helps us get closer. Rook a4 check. Black doesn't have many moves. Just want to point out the game is going on, but the result is never in doubt. Now, white with the extra pawn is clearly winning. Both players understand. e5, and no need to play en passant. He just keeps going. King b5. All we're trying to do is, with the pawn, king, and rook, is really get one of these pawns to the finish line or make black give up their rook for it. Rook a6. Trying to get this pawn, but I'm sure this was foreseen in a beautiful move coming. a8 queen. Rook has to take it. And then that buys white at least a moment of temporary peace, no checks, no danger, and we go for some other weaknesses. That pawn can't be really defended comfortably again because of our good move earlier, g5. Rook f8, that's not fun. To be just the complete defender passive. You are losing in the endgames when you're a passive defender. Rook f6, more weaknesses. White, back up a pawn. Rook behind the passed pawn, but it's way too late. Rook d7. Rook c7 check. And king c6. Supporting the rook so that the pawn can move. There's no check here, and black resigns. Let's just play a few moves out. You would imagine e3. The game would probably end here with b7. One more move is checkmate, and black can only throw one spiteful check in there. Wow, some amazing games today, and I really must say that these games are very valuable in understanding chess. We're not talking about a weak player here. The lower rated player always pretty good, but consistently outplayed by the stronger player. They played unique openings, which are good, but not the main lines to get their opponents out of danger. The Grandmasters adapt very well. They strike when the iron is hot attacking. And really kind of understanding the initiative, understanding the end games in this one, reacting well to change. all of these characteristics really help to make the stronger and stronger chess players. So I recommend you do that and look at some players a little higher rated than yourselves. But again, I don't find much value in looking at the games, let's say, of Nakamura versus Geary versus Magnus, because although fun, and I do look at them, but they're not as valuable because they're hard to understand. So if you are under 1,000 rating, you're going to get a lot more value looking at a game from, let's say, 1,800 versus a 1,400. And you'll see why the 1,800 wins the game because of their superior understanding and skill. So hopefully this was helpful again. That's always our goal, to entertain and teach. And we'll see you all next time. Appreciate the support, and any type of comments or suggestions really are appreciated. Thanks again.